Metroid Dread has become a success, not only for Nintendo, but also for the Spanish video game industry, becoming the highest rated Spanish video game in history. However, not everything is good news. Last week the Spanish media Vandal published a news in which some employees claim that they had not been included for not having worked at least 25% of the development of the game. Apparently this is a policy of the studio. One would think that this is a minor problem that could be easily solved, but unfortunately the situation at MercurySteam is more complicated. Marta Trivi, journalist of the Spanish media Anoid Games, published an article last October 15th, where she talks in more depth about the working conditions in which the employees of the studio have had to work. At the beginning of 2020, the employees complained a lot because they did not know very well about the future plans in relation to the projects that were being developed. The employees did not know how much development it had, what would happen after finishing it, or if they would continue working on it. Because of this, Enrique Alvarez made a video where he said that in the company there was room for everyone, and that everyone could stay if they wished. This in order to reassure everyone. But the calm was short-lived, as after a few months most of the testers were fired, leaving only 2, plus animators and 3D modelers. As if that were not enough, Nintendo representatives who had come to oversee the project said that the scope had been far exceeded. An employee claims that Metroid Dread had planned to have twice as many bosses and cinematics. However, it was impossible for the studio to do all that work for the planned date. A programmer spoke with representatives of Nintendo, and thanks to him, in the words of the worker, he saved their lives. According to the statements, the development of Metroid Dread was quite chaotic due to the lack of communication and the lack of trust between the company and its employees. On top of that, employees are punished when they commit any type of infraction. Punishments vary from changing the worker's project from one day to the next, even dismissal. But what did the company consider a violation? Well, it could be anything from simple things like complaining that you don't get the same bonus as your coworker who makes exactly the same as you, to discussing your salary with your coworkers. And speaking of salaries, workers also express the low salaries they receive. A junior receives 25k euros annually and a senior 28k. That is barely 3 more difference. As far as I have been able to see, these are low salaries for this type of position, since in other companies they pay up to 35k, although I do not know how accurate these data are. A critical moment of development could not be other than the pandemic. Like all other countries, in Spain had to choose to work from home to avoid the spread of the virus. However, MercurySteam did not agree with this, so on Friday, March 13th, they sent a mail to all employees at 5 p.m. where it said that workers will rotate shifts for 6 hours, and the missing hours will be archived to compensate them. At another time, the employees claimed that they sent the mail at the last minute to make sure that no one reached to complain. Fortunately, in the end they cancelled this plan, and the employees were able to work from home without any problems. Many other things happened during this period, from problems with the payment of salaries to very bad biosecurity measures for when the on-site work was resumed. They even did stupid things like taking away the microwaves from the employees, under the argument that we don't trust them to clean it. As if that were not enough, the Human Resources Department was not very helpful either, as they do not try to solve the employees' problems, and instead send them to talk to other people. One employee claims that because of this, she lost a month's salary, while other colleagues with the same problem obtained very different results than hers. Because of these problems, many conclude that how each employee is treated depends on how well he or she is liked by others. Now let's move on to the part that has generated the most controversy worldwide, the issue of credits. According to the company's policy, for an employee to be mentioned in the credits of the game, he/she must have worked in at least 25% of the development of the video game. However, exceptions can be made depending on whether he/she has done an exceptional job. However, Marta Trivi mentions that the employees she interviewed only found out about the policy when they read the Vandal article, stating that they were never notified of the policy. The situation gets even more complicated when some say that all their work is in the final game, without any modifications, meaning that their work was good enough to be added without the need to make any corrections. the situation becomes more serious than it seems when we take into account that the company also has a confidentiality and intellectual property policy. What does this mean? This policy says that the works made by the artists become the company's, causing that the artist loses the rights of all the material related to the project. Due to the confidentiality policy, the artist cannot say that he is responsible for certain things in the game. This is a serious problem for when they try to look for a new job, because they cannot go to say, hey, I did this in Metroid Dread. They also state that some employees are afraid to speak out due to the great influence that management has over the video game industry in general, stating that senior management knows a lot of people and they can destroy your career if they have a problem with you. They don't mind bad-mouthing you and screwing up your career, and that's why people don't speak up. Undoubtedly, the situation in the studio is more serious than it seems regarding the management. But if you wonder how is the atmosphere among the employees, apparently it is a very good one. The same journalist says that it is very easy to get statements of how warm and friendly the employees are. Besides that, the studio has a no crunch policy, reasons why it had to be explained to the Nintendo representatives that it was impossible for them to meet the deadline set since they were not willing to crunch. Undoubtedly, what is happening in MercurySteam is more complicated than it seems. Until the date in which I made this video, no member of the board has spoken about this. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if in a future update they add the names of the employees that weren't added, although I would think it was more pressure from Nintendo itself. Personally, I'm against this policy of 25% to appear in the credits, since many people are hired to do specific jobs. Without going too far, Retro Studios constantly hires people for the development of Metroid Prime 4. Because sometimes it is necessary to hire staff to do specific things, but that would be my small opinion on this issue. I would wait to see what happens in the future to give a better opinion on this. And you, what do you think about what happened in MercurySteam? Feel free to say your opinion in the comments, as long as it is in a respectful way. That would be all for today. I hope you liked the video. Take care and see you next time.